Yeah, so hi, welcome everybody. My name is Marit. I work for Leuven, and together with my colleagues that Wim just mentioned, we will be hosting this workshop for today. I'm really short what Leuven is and what we do. So basically we are within Leuven, the one-stop shop for entrepreneurship in the university. So on one hand, we really coach students who are trying to start up a business or have an idea for a business. And on the other hand, we try to instill an entrepreneurial mindset in as many students and faculty members that we can possibly achieve. So that's kind of the, the expertise that we're in this with. So what will we be doing today? We're going to do a challenge, if I can manage to change the slides, that is, yeah, around bridging the gap between university and entrepreneurship. So what we're going to do today is we'll give you a challenge. It'll be a little bit more defined than what you just see here. And by the end of the workshop, each of you in little groups will present the solution that you have come up with that for that challenge. We will be guiding you through the process, so no worries there. We'll start with some context, then we have a couple of little explanations and breakout room sessions to kind of get you going. If you do have any questions during the presentation, feel free to either interrupt me or type something in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on that as well. So just let me know and we'll get started. So first of all, a little bit about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking. So a lot of people, when we talk about entrepreneurship, think about kind of the tip of the iceberg, which is, starting your own business, having a startup or scale up large businesses. That's what most people think about. And then a lot of people feel like, well, that's not really for me. I don't really want to become an entrepreneur. It sounds great, but that's not for me. We see it a little bit differently. We think that entrepreneurship as a whole is both that tip of the iceberg, but also what lies beneath the surface, which is a whole range of skills and types of mindset that you have that kind of stimulates entrepreneurial thinking. So that's really what we want to focus on today, not necessarily entrepreneurship in terms of starting your own business, but more everything that comes with that mindset. So then when we talk about entrepreneurial thinking and acting, what do we mean by that? Well, there's a lot of different types of skills and personality traits that you can bring under that. But to name a few, you have innovation, you have seeing problems as opportunities, proactiveness, so really taking action and trying to solve things, taking risks, going from a passion to an action, examining the external world, creating impacts and creativity. These are just some examples that we have, but just to kind of give you an idea of what we think when we talk about entrepreneurial thinking and acting. Now, we don't think that these are things that you have to be born with. We think that you can develop them, which is really important and which is the reason why we are here as well. So just a little, thing about how the situation is right now in higher education. I think that, universities are institutions of critical thinking. They champion the development of the mind and they teach students to understand the in-depth problems that they lay before them. There are many tangible and practical benefits to critical thinking, of course. Yeah, from jobs as analysts and scientists to being effective communicators and problem solvers. But the focus on critical thinking in higher education it overlooks an important mode of thinking, which is entrepreneurial thinking. And entrepreneurial thinking recognizes that solutions to problems aren't always found by picking apart and analyzing those problems or ideas. Solutions lay in the investigation of the external world. So in its nature, entrepreneurial thinking is outward facing and not inward facing, as critical thinking often is. So entrepreneurial thinking, as I said, is not something that you inherently have or don't have. Luckily, it needs to be developed. And to develop entrepreneurial thinking, you need to practice it. There are methods that universities can adopt to help their students bridge the gap, which is our topic of today. And it's kind of also a meta thing because we feel like this format that we will be using today is already one type of, getting you to practice with entrepreneurial thinking, but we're also going to ask you to come up with ideas on how to integrate entrepreneurial thinking into education. So why is an entrepreneurial mindset so important? Maybe important to know, because of course that's kind of the premise that we're working on right here. We feel like it's not only important to have an entrepreneurial mindset when you want to start your own business. Of course, then it could be important, but it's also really important when you work as an employee for either a really big firm, a small firm, basically any type of career path that you might choose after you graduate. It's a good thing to have this entrepreneurial mindset and be a problem solver and be proactive. So just to kind of frame that a little bit more, I have 2 examples for you. The first one that we actually have a course that we organize with KU Leuven KIK at KU Leuven, which is called PIP, Product Innovation Project. And, you know, we've grown a lot, but this is the team that you see here is the team from the very first year that we did the PIP project. Right now we're working with all universities. Back then it was just 2 faculties, all faculties, I'm sorry. Back then it was just 2, it was engineering and business. So we had this team of students, and the idea of the course was that they got a problem to solve by a project sponsor. And this project sponsor asked them the question, can you come up with a solution to make the lives of people with tremors easier? So for example, people that have early onset Parkinson's disease or something like that, that makes it difficult for them to operate, to use their hands and stuff like that in daily life, and might make them, you know, self-conscious about themselves. So the team went to work really eagerly, and they right away started creating, like they had this idea, okay, we're going to build like an exoskeleton that you create around your arm, and then it'll stabilize any drink that you can hold in order for the people with the tremors, you know, to go to a cafe and be able to hold a glass still in their hands and drink from that. Which, I mean, it does solve the problem that they were trying to solve, which is you can't really hold a drink steady. But then they went to the people that deal with these tremors, and they went to talk to them and explain their solution, and they were not happy with that at all. Because what they forgot about is that the whole problem that these people are facing with it is that they don't feel comfortable going out because they have these issues. So maybe now if they go out, they won't be shaking their glass, but if they're then drawing attention by having a whole robotic arm around their usual arm, that doesn't really solve the issue. So they went and talked with these people and you know, asked them more about what really is important to them and how they could help. And they came up with a much easier and simpler solution, which is this little membrane that you see in the different types of glasses and cups here. That kind of adapts itself to the size of the glass. You can just insert it in any type of cup. Usually it's see-through, so you can't really see it in your glass. And what it does with the little, you know, the little points in at the end of the fluid does come out, but it doesn't come out when you shake the glass. So this was a much more elegant solution, which actually, you know, solved the problem that they were facing, that they didn't feel comfortable to go out and have a drink. That's kind of one example why it's really important to, you know, think about the customers and the people that you're trying to help when you think about problems. Another example that we have is Audi. So there's a large Audi factory right in the center of Brussels, basically. And a couple of years ago, also to talk about a PIP project, we went to the factory there to talk with people, you know, in terms of how can we try and organize a project with you. And they kind of showed us around the factory, and they gave us a little bit of an explanation on how they were working. And basically they explained that, you know, they used to work around trying to improve cars as much as they could, like how can we make a great car. And they, you know, added features, made things faster, better, everything that you can imagine. But then sometimes they would have a car that wouldn't sell at all, anywhere or in a particular region, and they wouldn't really know why. So they started talking to their customers more and asking them, well, why didn't you, you know, why weren't you interested in this car? And sometimes the reason that people gave were like really trivial things. For example, in America, it was a huge problem that one of the cars that they tried to sell there didn't have a cup holder, which is something that is essential for a lot of people that are buying a car in the United States. So really something basic that they just completely oversaw because, you know, they didn't really think about what does the customer want in what we provide them. So they kind of shifted the way that they think about innovation and improvement of the products. And they didn't really think about, okay, how can we improve our cars? but more about how can we improve mobility for our customers, which is really what the problem that they're trying to solve instead of the technology that they're trying to push. So that's a different way in which, in a really big company, it can be really important to look at problems and come up with creative solutions in there. Which brings us to today's challenge, of course. So the challenge that we have defined for you is how can we integrate an entrepreneurial thinking and acting in higher education environment? Now we do realize that this is a pretty vague question that we asked you, but that's what we want. We want you to, have an as open mind as possible. There will be no bad answers to this at all. It's just an exercise that we're going to do that kind of helps you, we're going to teach you some ways that you can use to go to this problem solving, and also to see how can we improve education using entrepreneurial thinking. So how will we do that? We will be using kind of the design thinking method in a really shortened version, because we only have 2 hours in total, which is not a lot, but we think that we've kind of made it possible to do the most important steps here to guide you through the process. What is design thinking? It's an approach used for practical and creative problem solving. It's extremely user-centric, so it focuses on humans first and foremost, seeking to understand people's needs and to come up with effective solutions to meet those needs. So it's kind of what we call a solution-based approach to problem solving. It's based heavily on methods and processes that are used in design, in which designers use, hence the name, of course, but it's actually evolved from and can be used in a very wide range of fields and professions, including architecture, engineering, business, medical fields, and so on. So design thinking basically has 5 steps or phases. First is empathize with your users, of course, define your users' needs, their problems, and your insights. They have ideate by challenging assumptions and creating ideas for innovative solutions. Prototype to start creating those solutions, and test the solutions. It's important to note that these 5 phases or stages or modes or steps aren't necessarily sequential. They do not have to follow any specific order and often can occur in parallel or repeat iteratively. So even the arrows that you see right now on the screen, that's not necessarily the way that it needs to go. You can draw arrows from each different step to the next one and back and so forth. So given that, you should understand the phases as not necessarily as a hierarchical or step-by-step process, but more as an overview of modes and phases that contribute to an innovative project rather than sequential steps. We're going to focus on the first 3 here right now, so empathize, define, and ideate. I will get back to the testing and prototyping later on in the session after we've already created some ideas and stuff like that. So first of all, empathize. The first stage of the process of design thinking is spent on getting to know the user and understanding their wants, needs, and objectives. This means observing and engaging with people in order to understand them on a psychological and emotional level. During this phase, the designer seeks to set aside their assumptions and gather real information and insights about the user. Next stage that we have is the define stage, which is dedicated to defining the problem. You gather all of your findings from the empathize phase that you've had, and you kind of start to make sense of them. What difficulties and barriers are your users coming up against? What patterns do you observe? What is the big user problem that your team needs to solve? And by the end of the define phase, you will have a clear problem statement. So maybe just to get back to the example I gave about the tremors, the overall kind of question that they had from the sponsor was, how can we improve the lives of people that deal with tremors? In the define stage, they defined their question to how can we make it so that people with tremors have an easier time going to a cafe or a bar and have a drink there. So they really focused in on one specific issue within the whole. Now, unfortunately, we don't have time to let you go through all of the steps today. We have already completed the empathize and define steps for you. We found a pain that we can solve, which is a gap between universities and entrepreneurship. And now we have defined a specific problem statement for you, which is how can we integrate entrepreneurial thinking and acting in a higher education environment. So you will start with the ideate step. And I step, it's time to start working on potential solutions. So the third phase in the design thinking process is where the creativity really happens. And it's crucial to point out that in the ideation stage is a judgment-free zone. There is no bad answer here. Anything that you can think of goes, and write it down. So don't think twice about anything that pops up in your mind. Designers will hold ideation sessions in order to come up with as many new angles and ideas as possible. There are many different types of ideation techniques that you can use. We have selected one of you and prepared it for you, which you will be working on in groups. So in a sec, you will be placed in breakout rooms. The groups have already been created, and then in that breakout room, you will have a link to a Miro board. Now, maybe some of you have worked with Miro before, some of you haven't. It's quite easy to understand, just get yourself a little comfortable feel, but basically it's one space that you have as your team where each of you can kind of attribute at the same time, and you can type things, put notes, anything like that. So we will be going to there. What will you be doing? And this explanation is also on the Miro board. So, don't be afraid to, if you don't understand it completely, but basically everybody in your team picks a color, like a little post-it note color. And in 3 minutes, you start writing 3 ideas that you have around this challenge. We will write the challenges also in Miro board as well. So I need 3 ideas. It doesn't have to be necessarily a whole solution to the problem, but just something that pops into your mind. And after 3 minutes, let's say that you are, the blue post-it, you will have started with the page that has blue post-it on top. Then you go to the second round and you find where blue is in the second round. And, so always, for you individually, you're always filling in the same color post-its. So what you then will have is one page where you are now on the second line, and you already have the ideas of the first person that wrote on that page. So you will be going through each of the pages. So you can kind of build on each other's different ideas that you have. So, and if in the 3 minutes you have more than 3 ideas, then feel free to add post-its or write more than one idea on a post-it. Anything goes basically. So then we will do this 6 times until all of the pages are full, and then we'll go back here and we'll talk more about how we can kind of now go from all of these different types of ideas to ultimately selecting one for you guys to present at the end of the session. So I think that maybe just leave some room if anybody has a question about that, or we will also be going to the breakout rooms to see if everything is working for you. Let me know if there are any questions. All right, then I suggest that we head into the breakout rooms right now and get you guys started. Good luck, everybody. All right, go ahead.
Can you all see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So we had a big discussion about this, the problem that we want to tackle. So in the general problem that we came up with, which is actually very common in our societies nowadays, which is simply lack of entrepreneurial mindset. And not necessarily the mindset of business people, the mindset of those who establish multi-million companies, because what is in essence entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is identifying the correct problem and identifying the best possible way to solve it, because and that's what it is. That's what it is. It's not necessarily just actually building something, but it's thinking in a way that can provide those solutions and help other people in collaboration with other people to implement those and bring them into reality. So how can we address this issue by integrating into entrepreneurship in universities? Well, what we were thinking is that students in these educational institutions need some more reality experience, so to say. They need to be exposed to reality a bit more, because even business students often just learn theory. But when we talk about other degrees or other bachelors in other universities, it's usually limited to their particular area, their particular knowledge, and that problem solution mindset doesn't really exist, or it's very limited. So what we could do is to integrate that experience into universities by bringing speakers, by bringing experts and people who have that entrepreneurial mindset, who could share it with students. Okay, so how do we bring it? When we thought about a general solution that could fit many different universities and wouldn't just be limited to one in particular, is creating something like a professional social network like LinkedIn, but not for people, but more for educational institutions on one side, and all the potential speakers, experts, business people, etc. on the other, so that they could look for each other in an easier way, so that educational institutions would not need to be hunting for all those speakers and spend a lot of time. It will be much easier to actually find them in one particular place, so that one of the sides of our solution would be to help educational institutions bring professional speakers to universities that would not necessarily talk about, as I said, about the pure business aspects, but about this problem solution principles that students would need to have. And also another important area, so to say, that would need to be touched is the process of developing a solution, because many students have a very bad idea, an illusion that it might be quite simple, but when they actually face it is when they find out how hard it is. So if students get exposed to such sort of process details from professional people in the beginning, that might help them avoid all those errors and all those hardships that they face if they just start from scratch. And that's what guest speakers can bring. But another aspect is that, okay, there is a guest speaker in a university, and then students listen, maybe they remember something, but then they quickly forget. So there can be two ways to address this issue. One is by simply giving students assignments, like to writing a report or creating a presentation for a particular class, and then presenting it to other students. Not necessarily to a bigger community, even to other students, because what this can make students do is reflect on what they've learned and actually retain the knowledge to keep it for the future. And another one, the second option could be on a bigger scale, is actually trying to create a project and develop it by taking those learnings, let's say one per semester, by taking those learnings from the different guest speakers into account and trying to pitch it. But pitching it also on that professional network, so that those guest speakers or other companies can evaluate those pitches, give advice, feedback, and comments that can help those students not necessarily implement those ideas, maybe if they're ambitious and they actually want to do it, but more for them to learn of what the process is, like to experience it themselves once they learn all those insights from professional people and gain valuable knowledge for the future. And also another idea we thought about is also to enhance that. Just one, yeah, sorry?
We have to start rounding off, so...
Yeah, it's the last thing I wanted to say, actually. So just one thing that we also were thinking about to bring more reality to a student's life, and to help them get personalized advice, is to use that social network, the professional network, also to try to set up mentoring sessions with professionals. So if there are interested students or teams that want to get feedback or advice from a particular person, this network could help them reach out to these people and actually organize something like this.
All right, thank you so much. I think that, great ideas. And you also made some great additional points to the problem statement that we found in the beginning. So yeah, I love it. I think we could definitely use those types of platforms, those types of solutions in our university as well. Group number 2, who will be presenting for you?
Noor.
I'll be presenting by...
I will share my screen.
Okay.
Yeah, so for us, we were also discussing many different things but then we saw that in our post-its, we all agreed on three different things. The first one, well, a couple of different of similar things, sorry. The first one was bringing companies into universities. And the second one was reducing the theory and increasing the practice. So after talking and discussing a bit, we came up with the problem, which is how can we connect real life entrepreneurs with university students from an early stage point, right inside of the educational journey. So then the solution we came up with is, okay, we can have these small startups or scale-ups that have certain challenges and bring students together to solve them. And then while we were discussing, we came up with these 3 steps that you can see here. The first one is a platform where we can have all these challenges listed that the startups are having. And then we bring a group of students together into a space, hopefully COVID-free space, where they can develop these ideas with the founders and help them tackle these challenges. And the way in which we're going to do it is implementing like innovative learning practices such as design thinking, for example. So since we don't have a lot of time, I would say that in a nutshell, this is what we came up with.
All right, thank you so much. I love it. I think part of it also overlaps maybe with the first idea a little bit, but then you took on a different direction. I liked it a lot. Great. All right, thank you, team 2. Off to team 3. Samuel will be presenting.
Yes, you guys could see my screen, yeah? You guys could hear me and see my screen, yeah?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we have discovered a problem that research nowadays in universities, they're very academic focused, and they have some limitations in applications. It would take more time to convert research findings to practical use in product development and innovation. So we wanted to solve the problem by making research to be more practical and closer to market and corporate demands. And we do think that the development of entrepreneurial mindsets among students in different stages could help foster their mindset of conducting practical research. So we have came up with 3 different ideas. The first idea, which is mainly targeting junior students, is the inventor game idea. It would serve as an introduction for them to develop a market-aware entrepreneurial mindset by playing existing inventor games that were developed by that were already existing and developed by other universities. They would become an inventor themselves and think of different ways to commercialize their inventions and become market aware subconsciously. The second way, especially for senior research students, they could intern or do co-ops at corporations. So they would have closer knowledge on what the market needs are for their respective fields of research and studies. At the same time, at these companies, they could also practice their entrepreneurial skills or mindset by starting their own in-house projects in the companies that they intern at, which could help them stay grounded or know ways to develop practical research and a practical application from their research. The third one would be after them doing formal research, maybe for masters and PhDs at universities, the university would also provide a platform, a hub, to connect market-aware student inventors that have conducted research that are marketable and that has practical applications to external companies that might be interested in their technology and in their research to actually maximize the research real-life application and value creation as well. So everyone would be benefited from product development based on the research that they've conducted, which is really market aware and thanks to the entrepreneurial mindset they had in research.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. I mean, I love the ideas. It's amazing what you guys have done in a really short amount of time, because I do understand that it was not easy to, you know, do all of these exercises within a time frame. I think kind of to conclude, if I hear all three of your ideas, we definitely need to connect the industry and entrepreneurs way more to universities and their students. I think that is something that kind of all of you have pointed out that, that we can definitely work further on. So thank you so much. Thank you for your active participation and keeping with the program. Not always easy, but we really enjoyed working with you. We hope that you kind of got an impression of the design thinking process and how you could use it to solve problems in your studies, but also later when you go on working. It's a very popular method. So if you're interested in learning more, there's lots of resources that you can find online about design thinking. We most of all hope that we were able to kind of get you started thinking about the entrepreneurial mindset and how we could use that in a higher education setting, because that was, of course, the goal for today. Thank you so much. If you have any questions left after the session, or right now, you can ask them as well, or after our sessions, you can get in touch with us at kik@kleuven.be. So let's just check the chat that there's no questions. All right, great. That's it for me. So thank you all very much and have a great day.